You're very welcome back to the Irish Political Roundup with me, Roisin Chleirigh.
And me, Paul Brophy.
And we are with one of Ireland's favourite TDs, who is one of the most outspoken TDs in Dail Eireann, and who, you really do put them questions to the government, and really outspoken and really speaking for the opposition, Deputy Ken O'Flynn.
Well, I wouldn't be doing my job if I wasn't speaking up for the opposition, I suppose, is the first thing I would say to you. I don't know about being the favourite TD either. I think there's a lot of people that'd like to see me not a TD. But thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction. Delighted to be with you again, and congratulations. I'm seeing all these new exciting equipment as well from you, and so things are getting bigger and better for you guys as well, yeah? So that's good to see.
With camera angles and different things like that. So
good stuff.
It's very, very interesting. It's exciting as well.
Yeah, we're having fun.
Exactly.
That's the main thing.
Well, that's it. Exactly.
We're having fun
know.
and we're telling the political story.
Oh,
We are. Deputy Ken O'Flynn, Independent Ireland, over the summer, I don't think you took any days off, because every day it was actually really heartwarming to watch the Independent Ireland were on the plinth or in the Dáil and putting out videos and messages and press releases out during the summer recess.
Well, I suppose the one thing you learn is that, summer recess, and when the Dáil is called off, you're back in your constituency. You're not swanning around on a big yacht somewhere. I wish I was. But, you're busy because you're trying to catch up with your constituency work as well. And sometimes that takes a back seat as well. Now, I'm very blessed that I have a fantastic team inside in the office and a great team of volunteers around me as well that are doing clinics for me, and additionally running the office as well with my own staff. But, look, it's a 24/7 job. Fran just said to me the other day, he said, I've never seen you work as hard as you do in all the years I know you. And it is true, because you don't switch off from it. There always is a new problem or a new situation that has occurred, whether it's in your own constituency, whether it's a national problem, whether it's something that's unfolded, whether it's a member of the press has contacted you, a whistleblower has contacted you. Very often there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of wrongs to be right. And I'd love to say that we could take time off, but our job as opposition TDs, and I could talk about for all the opposition, is to hold the government to account.
Yes.
And shed light on things that perhaps are being swept under the rug, whether it's locally or nationally or internationally for that matter. So look, yeah, it's been, just because we're back in the Dáil, the summer recess was very welcome. I did get a couple of days off, I have to say, which I got to spend with my nephews and my niece, which that was great fun. My pocket suffered dramatically because I would be the soft touch, If your daddy won't buy, ask your uncle, he'll buy it for you, And so we had a good couple of days off as well, and together in the family, and that was lovely. But yeah, no, it's been an active summer, and it's been active in the constituency work and active as well nationally, and there was a lot of questions down there. I think I put down about 300 questions in the month of August to the Count Corley's office and to various ministers' office, to the annoyance of many staff, I'm sure, but questions that needed to be asked. A lot of the answers I've got back don't give me the solutions that I want, or they're not addressed properly, so we're dealing with that as well. But our office is very active, and both for local and national stuff.
Yeah, I was down in your constituency last weekend with my daughter, and she took me down the Marina Walk. It's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, they've done a great job there, in fairness. We're always as politicians, we're always very easy to criticise things that city councils or local authorities don't achieve or don't do and put the blame on them. I think we're very lucky, actually, with the local authority that we have in Cork City and Cork County as well. There's, in particular, you have two people at the top in Cork City Council, the C and the Deputy C, who are very proactive. It's refreshing to see, because as my history with the previous CE wouldn't have been great, but the work ethic from the current CE and her deputy has been second to none. And they're easy to reach out to, they're easy to talk to. I have to say, I had a meeting with the Cork City CE recently, and we were at very, very different points of view. But we were willing to sit down and talk to one another and take on the ideas. And she did say to me at the end of this, she said, well, I didn't look at it from that perspective. And the willingness to look at it from a different perspective as well, and that's good. That's good. The dialogue is good. I'm very happy, in particular with Cork City Council. I think they've, in 12 months, they've changed the organisation tremendously, under the new direction, and it's working very well. That's my belief on it anyway. And there's some very exciting projects, and I was very delighted to work with them on achieving €7 million for Shandon in my own constituency. We'd secured 400,000 prior to that for the rebuilding and restructuring of the Shandon clock and the clock tower. There's a lot more to be done there. But I couldn't do that alone, or I couldn't knock at the Taoiseach's door, or a couple of civil servants that have crossed the street now when they see me, the Department of Finance, but I couldn't badger those unless those applications were in, unless they were right. And in fairness to City Council, they were very forthcoming with all TDs in the constituency, saying, look, I need you to focus on this. There's an application A, B, C and D, and can you rally the troops and talk on our behalf and help us and assist us with that? And they've been very open with that. And I was delighted that we achieved some things, and there's other things that we're not finished yet with.
And the Docklands. Tell us about the Docklands and where in that.
Well, look, the Docklands, I suppose, for me is, the Docklands for us actually has a huge significance, because the first proposal about the development of the Docklands actually came from my father in 1994, I think, in a motion to Cork City Council. Yeah. So go back 1994, 31 years ago, to when it was first proposed, to see that the Docklands hasn't really moved on since. And it's had a lot of false starts and false promises and false dawns. If I can give credit where credit is due, the government did come up with a policy and a commitment of X amount of money. And then you see a development going in for an application of 840 units and being turned down by An Bord Pleanála, mainly because the government hasn't done its work and hasn't provided the infrastructure around it, hasn't provided the schools. So you have one organisation such as Bord Pleanála looking at government policy and saying, yes, government policy is saying we want to develop the Docklands, but you have other departments that don't give a damn about government policy or don't want to do the joined up thinking. And that's been very evident to me from day one inside here, that one department doesn't speak to the other department. There's no joint up thinking. There's no saying, if I turn down this planning, it's going to affect, it's going to go in contradiction with government policy. It's going to go in contradiction with the Department of Finance and the monies that are being secured for that. And there's nobody telephoning one another and saying, can you do this? And if we do this, will you promise to do that? And that's one of the big problems. And for such a small country, for departments and government departments not to be speaking to each other in a very candid, open way, I see a serious problem with that. I see a serious problem in the civil service in general, that it seems to be more and more civil servants seem to be employed, especially since COVID, and we seem to have committee after committee after committee, and nothing is decided. Everything is being pushed up to another committee, another level. And I'm seeing ministers that are operating in a way that I don't particularly like. And a lot of these people are career politicians. They started in politics very early. They didn't work outside in private industry. They didn't work in public industry. The Taoiseach is an example of that. Somebody that didn't work outside the political arena. And look, there's a place for that as well. But, coming from owning a bar restaurant myself, from being involved in an international company, being involved in family businesses, I've learned to take responsibility, and the buck stops with me. And you learn kind of very, very quickly as well that, on a Thursday night when you're looking for the wages for the staff on a Friday, how am I going to do this? So I've paced the floor and done that. I think there's a lot of people without that experience. Yeah. And I think a lot of ministers come into departments with very little knowledge of what their department does. I think a lot of ministers come in and they play the role as chairman of their department rather than the role of managing director. And I think we have to have people that are capable, that have a proven track record, and that are willing to take on the civil service and willing to make decisions. One of the biggest frustrations for me all the time has been finding a decision maker, whether it's in local government or national government, finding somebody that says, yes, I can sign off on the check. Yes, we're going to greenlight that project to go ahead. Because the big problem is that nobody wants to take responsibility for it. Nobody wants their head on the chopping block. Prime example of that is outside. We still don't know who signed off on the bike shed. We still don't know who signed off on this, that and the other. We had the Taoiseach during the debates of the last year's election saying he didn't even sign off for the National Hospital, the National Children's Hospital on RT, where he was the minister and signed out. The buck stops with you. So until we kind of say to people, look, you have to take responsibility. Busy is your job. You're paid to be busy, and you're paid to take responsibility, and you're getting paid bloody well for it as well. So that's one of the great frustrations.
And accountability.
Accountability. There's a serious lack of accountability, and until we stop covering up for mistakes, and you put the hands up and you say, I got it wrong.
Yeah.
If I didn't look, there's been plenty of times where, even when I was in the restaurant business, you buy in X amount of stock, or you think this is going to fly off the shelf, or you think you come up with a brilliant idea, and people have gone against you, and the rest of it. Sometimes it works for you, sometimes it doesn't, and you have to put up the hands and say, "Well, I made a bags of that, lads."
Yeah.
And we'll start over.
And you learn.
And you learn. And you learn never to do it again.
It's human error. People accept human error, but they don't accept it when you avoid accountability or take personal responsibility.
Well, that's the thing. And I think we'd be far more forgiving of our politicians if every now and again they came into the Dáil and they said, "We really got this one wrong, but I'm going to fix it. And this is how I'm going to fix it." Rather than, the cover-up is worse than the mistake. Very, very often. And I think you see that over and over again. And, there's no point of going through it. And I'm not looking for heads and blocks every week. I'm looking for somebody to say, right, yeah, you're right. Actually, that's a fair point. I got it wrong. A bit like the city manager in Cork saying, I'm seeing it from your point of view. It's worth taking it on. It's worth having a look at it. It's worth having a conversation about it. And that's, that's what you need. That's what you need, I believe.
And Deputy O'Flynn, the Controller and Auditor General, the report came out recently, and it has found a litany of wasteful spending within government departments across the board. Are you seeing that money isn't getting to where it's supposed to? We have a Department of Public Expenditure and Reform, and is it really doing what it's supposed to be doing?
No, it's not. And part of that cover-up is the fact that the only NGO that's been closed down by the government over the last 10 years was an NGO called Benefax. And Benefax was the organisation that was tracking state boards, state funding, and going all the way through that and fact-checking, seeing what was available, seeing what was spent, and the rest of it. And lo and behold, it's the only one that's been defunded by government. It costs about 600,000, I think, to set up. That was the running cost of it, and 250,000 to close down. And the reason was, they said, the Department of Public Expenditure, Department of Finance, can do all this in-house, and it will be done in-house. I haven't seen it happen in-house. And there's overruns continuously in every department. There's spending, there's no accountability. There seems to be a black hole and a pot of money, and there seems to be an attitude, certainly coming from some people, of, doesn't matter, it's not my money. And I don't even know where we are now with the National Hospital or what price it is at the moment. It seems every week we have a new date of when it's going to open, we have a new time, and then we have a new scandal of what's wrong and where it's wrong. There's people making serious money out of it, but I don't see an end to it, and I don't see an end to wasteful spending. And we've been continuously calling this out for the last year since our party was formed. The waste of public spending and the accountability of public spending and value for money for the taxpayer. And we're not Scrooge,
no,
but we're certainly want to see benefit. And there are certain things that could be cut immediately, very, very quickly. Frivolous kind of ideologies and all this sort of stuff. And I've always been amazed at the amount of public art that is out there in the HSE and the budget that they spend on public art. I'd much prefer to see them spending that on oncology. But let's get the basics right first before we start worrying about what oil painting is on the wall in the waiting room. That's my belief.
You're talking about the frivolous ideologies. Well, I'm not getting an answer. Last week, you asked the Minister, Hannah McEntee, a question. What is a woman? And she never answered. I find that very interesting, that a woman who's a minister and could not answer what a woman is.
Well, I'm very disappointed with the entire answer of Helen McEntee. I think she was very aggressive towards me. I'm used to aggression across the house. That's the banter of. I believe I've actually written to the Ceann Comhairle about this because I didn't get an answer to my question. And she said, she made the statement also that I was misleading the House in what I'd said. Now, what I had said, very, very factually, is that there's an X chromosome, an XY chromosome, with the exception of intersex, which is 1 in 6 million chance. there's only the male and female. And I strongly believe that 10 and 11-year-olds should not be taught about 25, 35, 85 genders. So yeah, look, I asked the Minister for Education a very simple question. What is a man? What is a woman? What is a woman, actually, is what I asked her directly. The Minister proceeded then to go on and give a long-winded rebuttal and, try to make out that I was misleading the House. I'm not quite sure, because what I said and what I fully believe is that schools should not be laboratory for ideology. I believe that there's enough things going wrong in schools, whether it's the amount of young children passing from sixth class onto first year that have serious problems when it comes to reading and writing, when it comes to problems with adult literacy, when it comes to problems with mathematics. I think we should be getting that first. I would have loved if the Minister came out with her statement and said, after 27 years, we're going to change the agenda, and by the end of the lifetime of this government, we're going to have every child in Ireland will be leaving at the age of 12 school proficient and excellent in cursive, in mathematics, in reading and writing, the basics, and would be able to speak a second language.
Yes.
I think that would be fantastic if that's what we achieve, that every child in Ireland could either speak Chinese or French or Spanish or, one of those languages that's going to help them, or, that we're going to introduce coding. We all know AI and computers is the future, to date. Instead, they're introducing an ideology of talking about sex to 9, 10, 11-year-olds, talking about how many genders are out there. We still haven't recognized that to my mind, there's two genders. There's male and female, with the exception of the intersex, which is 1 in 6 million chance. We're talking about same-sex attraction. And I wonder, is there enough going on in children's lives today, rather than worrying about same-sex attraction, rather than talking about, and I think that's very confusing for a 10-year-old to take it. Leave them be kids.
Yeah,
leave them be kids. And there has been a huge forum of parents over the last number of years who have said no to this, who do not want ideologies taught in their school, who do not want sex education. I believe that's the job of a parent. I don't think it's for the state to decide when your child loses their innocence. I have a huge problem with that. And I think the Minister's dismissal of what I had said and the question that I had answered shows how removed and how silly life has become in the bubble of government, when a minister can't get up, female minister or somebody who identifies as a female minister and a mother, cannot tell me that what a woman is, or cannot identify, or doesn't have the guts to say what a woman is. That's probably more annoying than anything else, because I'm sure she has the education and the mindset that she knows exactly what a woman is, but she certainly doesn't have the guts to say out in a public forum what she believes a woman is. And if she doesn't believe that a woman is what a biological woman, no, that's fine. Argue the point with me, but have the guts to say what you believe a woman is.
But I think
it's not a mindset. To my mind, it's not a mindset. And look, I'm going to be totally honest with you. I know people that are trans. Some of them are lovely, very nice, decent people. I have no problem with that. I think we have to be very respectful of that. But I think we also have to be honest with one another and say, just because you wear lipstick and wear a dress doesn't make you a woman. And I shouldn't have to be involved in your fantasy of life. But I think, if you're not hurting anyone, don't have a problem with it. And everyone should get to live their life the way they want to live their life. But don't ask me to indulge you in saying that, and I accept that people are trans, and I'm fine and I accept that people would say, well, I'm a trans woman, but don't call yourself a woman. To my mind, other people have a different view.
I think, from my personal view, I think that any decision that an individual wants to say or do in their private life over the age of 18 or 25 is up to them. But allow children to have their innocence, and an awful lot of parents and children, I'm talking to a lot of teenagers, and they don't want to hear that in school. And they feel it's being forced down them. And they're embarrassed and they don't want it. And parents don't want it.
Yeah. Well, look, I think most of us got our sex education from, it was my mother sat me down, and God knows that was an embarrassing enough conversation to have with your mother, but and that's how it is, and I think it should be up to the parents, and then, there's a later period in when you're 14 or 15 and when you're able to comprehend far more complex issues and things like that. Maybe that's the time to have that discussion.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of parents will be open to that, but I really feel that when you're, God, I think back when I was 10 years of age, I was thinking about Action Man and He-Man and going out and playing in the swings and fighting with my brothers. And, that's what I was
Out on the bikes until 12 o'clock at night.
And trying to stay out as late as possible, I wasn't interested in who was sleeping with who and who was doing what and what was going on here. It didn't even enter my mind.
It's over-sexualizing children.
I think so. There's been a tendency to do that. And, let's leave children have their innocence. And there's enough. God knows there's enough pressures.
Too much pressure.
In life now with the way life has gone for a lot of families.
And also, there's teachers out there who are not comfortable with a lot of the content there. And what happens if you're a teacher and say, "I'm not comfortable teaching that."
Teaching this, or having this discussion with children as well, and the process around this, there's all these NGOs and specialized groups that are coming and advise the minister in their department, and they'll put their great argument together, and they're all being, but let's start listening to the teachers and let's start listening to the parents, and they've been ignored. The majority have been ignored over and over again. There's been a lot of assemblies of parents and the whole lot, and they've been ignored. And the minister made a very peculiar statement saying, we've already gone out and asked children about this. And they say by the time they were 12 years of age, they didn't need the sex education or sex training. Let's go back to that and let's say, but maybe we should be teaching respect in schools, respect for yourself, respect for boys and girls, and respect for other people's ideals and respect for other people's religions and perspective of life. Let's build children into that and start that from an early age. And then you can have the adult conversation when they're closer to their adulthood. Yeah. That's what I believe. That's what I believe. And that's,
So Deputy Flynn, we're also moving on to, you've also been speaking about the breaches within the food safety, especially in the areas of halal meat in Ireland.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is something that has really become a hot topic in the month of August with me. A number of people, and there was a lot of social media going around, people didn't realize that they were purchasing halal meat. It's a code number. When I started putting down parliamentary questions, I found out that there has been an awful lot of breaches in the slaughterhouses regarding halal meat. They were concerning. I think there's a lot more work to be done on that. And I think there's a need for clear labelling. And also, I believe parents who are availing of school meals should know whether their children are eating halal meat as well. And look, this is not taking anything from the industry, but it's clearly marketed. It's clearly labelled. It's clearly marketed. Tell me what I'm having. And there are a lot of people don't agree with the slaughter of animals through the halal way, or the kosher way, for that matter. So I think it's important that we have that information and it's available to us, and it's clear, rather than a number, which is almost like a telephone number on a label, to find out whether this was halal or not. I don't think that's acceptable. But I think from the set of parliamentary questions I've put down and the answers I've received back, there seems to be an awful lot of breaches in these slaughterhouses that are not up to Irish code or European code. And that's very, very concerning also, because I don't feel comfortable about eating a piece of meat that's been slaughtered incorrectly, or that there's a hygiene problem, or that HSE or HSE has had to go in and investigate, and coding is wrong and things like that. And I think that's a serious issue, and that's not going to go away, but it needs to be rectified, and it needs to be acknowledged. And again, it comes back to the, it's almost like the wink, wink, nudge, nudge of civil service and Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael TDs of, don't say anything because you might upset somebody, you might turn over the apple cart rather than upset it by mentioning this, and then you ask the question, why? who would I upset? Why would I upset them? And they'll never give you the straight answer. They'll never give you a truthful answer of who you're upsetting or why you're upsetting or who might be offended by it. They don't give a damn who I offend by asking a question. What I do give a damn about is ensuring that it is kept to the highest standard. It is the information is provided, and people can go out and make their own decision after that. But there's no way I'm accepting in this day and age in a country like Ireland that we have one slaughterhouse being under every European regulation and ticking every box and doing everything right, and which is expensive with all the red tape, and for other slaughterhouses, because they may be associated with religion or religious act, getting away with murder and getting away with producing food that is not correct or not acceptable under Irish or European regulation.
And I lived and grew up in Saudi Arabia, so I understand the halal meat and how the animals are killed. And I certainly never felt comfortable, and I stopped eating meat because when I was younger because of that. And I think that's something that we're a Christian country, so that is something that we grew up with, knowing we're not all, as you said, all happy with animals being slaughtered.
No.
But we want them to be slaughtered in a humane way.
Correct.
We want it to be hygiene and with those standards.
Yeah, with that meet the criteria of the European Union and our own high standards here. And I think that's only fair.
Yeah.
That's only fair to the general public. But you have more experience than I have having a box of surprises, aren't you, with the Saudi Arabia? I wouldn't have put you down for a Saudi Arabian, but look, I think in fairness, everything should be treated equal, and regardless of whether it's kosher, whether it's halal, or whether it's to do with this religion or that religion, I think you have to meet the correct standards. Full stop, and there should be no exception, or there shouldn't be any shame in asking those questions as well. And look, there's a lot of people not happy with the current standards that we have in this country about any slaughter of animals. You talk to vegans, you talk to vegetarians, and they have their right to choose. But I think it's important that there's clear labeling, and people have the right to choose what they purchase in the supermarket and know what the product is.
And there's clear, concise clarity.
Correct.
So, Deputy Flynn, you've also been speaking about recently, but something that's very close to my heart. And when I was on local radio, I couldn't get anyone to talk about. Everybody said, no, we don't want to talk about that, shush, And then last year, the year before, Paul and I did a program on the YouTube channel on child trafficking. Again, MetPath. No one, they even found it difficult to get people to talk about. And you brought up, and at that time, and still, Ireland was on tier 2 of the world's watch child trafficking. And Ireland is like a hub on the same watch list as Romania and Saudi Arabia. And you've been bringing that up, not just about the child trafficking, but also the human trafficking, not just in immigration, but also here within Tusla.
Well, that's true. I know it's quite shocking to read the statistics. The amount of children that go missing in this country by design, a lot of it. You can read between the lines very quickly in the report. I don't know if Tusla is really up to scratch. I think there needs to be a root and branch examination of Tusla from top to bottom. I've met with many whistleblowers in Tusla, some with harrowing stories, some people that were threatened, whose family were threatened, whose windows were put in, people who didn't know whether they had a job or not, who had to go over because there was no communication whatsoever once they signed protective disclosures, and people that didn't know whether they were going to get paid on Friday or not. Because why? Because they were trying to protect children and seeing what was happening in the organization and seeing the cover-ups in the organization. And Tusla has an awful lot to answer for in this country. I truly believe that. It's something that I'm working with a lot of whistleblowers on, but there needs to be a root and branch examination of this. And child trafficking in this country, human trafficking in this country is a serious problem, and it seems to be going well below the radar. We have many women coming in from Eastern Europe and beyond into this country that are being human trafficked, that are promised that they're going to get jobs here as cleaning ladies or jobs in kitchens and jobs as cooks and the whole lot. that find themselves, their passports taken off them, that they're sold into human slavery, human bondage, and prostitution, and being moved around the country from apartment to apartment. There's no longer kind of prostitution is no longer on the streets. It's moved into private apartments, rented by the month or rented by, and people are being moved. They're being moved between here and the United Kingdom because it's easier to get in and out of the United Kingdom. It's a serious problem. Nobody wants to take it on, or nobody. There's a huge underbelly here, and it seems to be happening, coordinated from groups outside the country and internal groups in the country. And it's a bloody serious issue. We're not finished with it at all. But we have to start talking about it, and we have to, and it's all this. That's one of my biggest gripes all the time, and it comes back to this pushing everything under the carpet and hiding it because you might offend somebody, or you might say, oh, well, you can't say that because it'll offend this group, or it'll offend this person's religion, or offend this nationality. If it's happening, it's happening. If these groups are in here and they're up to no good and they're profiting from misery of a human being, that has to be stopped.
And child trafficking, human trafficking, and it kills me to say this, is far more lucrative than drugs or the weapon or pharmaceutical industry.
And far easier to hide and far easier to get away with.
Yeah.
And, we don't have enough Garda resources looking at this. Garda, you're working with Interpol. I had a very, very interesting conversation with the guard off the record who said, the further east I go, the less information I get because police forces in places in Eastern Europe don't have the databases so there's a lot of misinformation out there and trying to get that, and it's coupled with the people entering the country as well with no passports, and no identification. And we've seen several cases of people coming into the country that have been up to no good and have been involved in international cases. There's, I think, one gentleman before the courts at the moment with maybe 27 aliases.
Yes.
And that's becoming more and more, and more often we're seeing things like that. And these people are dangerous. They're very well organized, and they're deceitful, and there is serious money to be made out of it. And it's very underground and very, very quiet, and nobody's speaking about it. But it's a serious problem for all of Europe. It's a serious problem for
the
all
whole
of Europe.
world, really.
Yeah.
The whole world. And it was something even that President Trump has said, even in America, he was stopping the human trafficking and child trafficking.
Yeah.
And the movie as well. We watched the movie. I had the opportunity of watching the movie before it actually came out in the cinemas. So, and it just goes to show that children are not being protected.
There's tremendous evil goes on in the world.
Yeah.
Look, that's the reality of it. And anything that happens to a child like that is, it's just appalling.
It's a basic human right.
It's terrible, and it needs to be stamped out. And every government in the world isn't doing enough.
No.
Isn't doing enough.
So, and children, as you said, that there's so many children are unaccounted within the state. There's no proper identification or referral system within the state.
Well, that's one of the big catch-22s. What is Tusla meant to be doing? How do you lose all these children? How, unless it's orchestrated, unless it's pushed by gangs and the rest of it. But you have to be accountable. You have to find out where, when, and how. And, the Garda resources are limited, I accept that. But Tusla has been asleep at the wheel when it comes to the amount of children that are missing in this country and unaccountable for in this country. And then,
and children being used for sexual exploitation.
When you eliminate the however bizarre and however weird it is, when you eliminate the questions around that, the obvious and the truth remains of, it has to be orchestrated. It has to be criminal gangs that are moving children between the UK and Ireland. And it's very, very obvious. It becomes very apparent once you start digging into this. And as an organisation, Tusla needs to put up its hands and say, yes, we're getting things wrong. We need help. There's nothing wrong with asking for help, but highlighting the situation rather than hiding the situation. And too many times in different organisations, whether it's HSE, whether it's Tusla, whether it's all these other groups that we've had before us in the Dail, and we've had so many scandals and so many hand wringing and so many crying and bitter and crocodile tears in government. They have to put out their hands and say, we're getting it wrong and we need help. I mean, this is how we need to address it, rather than trying to cover it up.
And the legal protections on resident status, and even when immigration rights, when people are being brought in for under human trafficking for sexual exploitation, when they get here, there's no rights. So they need to be protected if they
they're the victim.
looked after.
The victims need to be protected as well, and that's the one of the biggest challenges as well of what happens now once you've opened up this gang and you found out what's happening, and you find these people that are, many of them have been beaten very badly. They've been subject to sexual crime. Some of it horrific. Their mental health is poor. Their physical health is poor. They've been drugged. They've been dosed with these drugs and all these sort of things. The most horrific stories that you come across. And you're talking about young women and children. And then, they're expected to fight their own corner about legalization, status, all that sort of stuff. And those services have to be provided as well. You have to help. You have to protect the victim.
Yeah.
And we have to be far more understanding of the victim. It's not about you're free to go. It's about how do we assist you? How do we help you? How do we repatriate you back to your own country? How do we get in contact with your family? Do you know who your family even are at this stage?
Yeah.
And how do you help them? And there's a lot of mental anguish out there and upset. And many of these people don't speak English or have very, very little English as well. It's tragic. It's very sad. It's awful.
And you've spoken about the systematic failures, the victims invisible and they're so unsupported.
Correct.
And you talked about we need urgent reforms urgently.
Well, yeah, because look, it's not even about reforms. We need the laws put in place. We need to be assisting people. We need to be, we need to be victim driven. And as I stated, Tusla and other organisations just don't seem to be cutting the mustard. Just don't seem to be doing the job. And whether that's dismantling of the organisation and starting all over again, or putting somebody else in to do the root and branch review, we have to get this job done, and it's urgent. And we need assistance, and we need finance from Europe for that. Mm-hmm. Because I don't think it's not just an Irish government problem; it's a UK-Irish government problem. And additionally, it's coming in from France. It's affecting all of Europe, and there needs to be a strong focus from the European Union on this,
and the regulations,
and a crackdown as well.
Crackdown.
Yeah.
So we look forward to hearing what the updates that you have and you bring to us in the door. And as you said, that another thing that you brought up, and it's still related to Tusla, is the Tusla must come clean on the 10 million paid to fraud tainted care, child care and care companies.
Yeah, well, that just amazes me. They know about this. They've paid the money out. They've accepted that there are fraud cases, and nothing has been done. Nobody's been held accountable. I don't know if there's anything even before the criminal courts at the moment. It seems bizarre to me that we've been involved with a 10 million euro scandal. And
10 million.
Yeah.
Like it's 10 million.
Yeah.
It's not 10,000 or 10 euros. It's 10 million.
No, it's a 10 million euro scandal in fraud. Yeah. And that's your money, my money. That's money that we're putting into the exchequer by working hard and doing everything right. And then you have state agencies which are just, they might as well go out and take the check or take the cash and dump it into the Irish Sea. And that's what's happening in a lot of organisations, not just in Tusla, but they need to come clean about this. And they need to say, yeah, we've lost it. And, but they're not even asking for help. They're too busy involving themselves in continuous cover-ups and bullying of whistleblowers, from what I can ascertain. That's what I find the organisation is not fit for purpose.
And whistleblowers are not protected and they're not supported as well. And they be cancelled, their character assassination, they lose their job, they lose their family, they lose friends and their colleagues.
Well, I suppose, look, over the last number of months, I've met with whistleblowers from the Irish Prison Service, from the Gardaí, from Tusla, from charitable organisations. I had a very interesting meeting recently as well. And there's a common theme. It's bully the person out of the job. It's brand them as somebody who is a dangerous person, who is not quite right, who just doesn't fit in, who's angry. Give them that reputation, that they're not fit for purpose, intimidate them, financially starve them,
Mm-hmm.
bully them.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one gentleman I met with recently, and he said, they were going around saying I was mad. He said, mentally ill. And he said, I don't know, did I start off as mentally ill or have I become mentally ill from the abuse that I took in the organization he was with? And I understood that, it really resonated with me because the amount of hatred, nastiness, the amount of mental abuse that people go through when they become the whistleblower, when they sign the protective disclosure, the amount of hatred towards them, their family members, the bullying, the intimidation. There's a very common theme, and we saw that with Maurice McCabe, of bullying your family, financially starving you, not just ruining that particular period that you're in your life, which is bloody difficult to be the one to stand up for what you believe in when you're the only one standing up. But my God, you look at these people and you say, how are you still here? Because and I'm sure there must have been many that went to the river because they couldn't take it anymore. I've had the most horrific stories inside in this office from people that have sacrificed everything to do the right thing and are not being rewarded but punished, and still continue on years later being punished because they're no longer financially able to work, or they've gotten this reputation, or because somebody looks at their CV and says, oh, well, they were in the unfair dismissals case, or they were involved in this, or they were involved in that. And there's a black mark against you for doing everything right. And the protections are not there. And the fact that they're not able to get free legal aid, the fact that when they sign a protective disclosure order, and if there's a crime committed against you or a member of your family, after that, it's never linked to the protective disclosure order. So I've had a situation where somebody signs a protective disclosure order, a group of people that were involved in that broke his front door, broke windows. It was treated as a separate case. It wasn't linked to the other. So it became a minor charge, a misdemeanor charge to the individuals, rather than linking it to a full criminal investigation. And it's not guaranteed in the so legislation is lacking there. And it was actually the last minute it was taken out of the whistleblower legislation. I found out that afterwards, Sorry.
Would that be something Independent Ireland would look at?
Well, look. Yeah, I met with the legislation office here because I'm bringing in. I'm writing a number of pieces of legislation. It's been an awful lot slower than I thought it would be. You're elected as a TD. You come in, you're really enthusiastic, and you're writing these motions and you're writing this legislation. You think, God, I'm really going to get there now. Everything is painstakingly slow. So I have 3 pieces of legislation written that are. One is almost ready to go. It's with the Bills office at the moment. They're checking the legality and the whole lot. The next one is regarding Luke's Law, which is a law that we're trying to bring in because I don't know if you remember in Cork, there was that awful tragedy earlier this year where a young man went into the river, got into complications and resulted in his death. There was over 100 people along the riverside that day that were videoing, and nobody sent. There was lifebuoys next to them, and didn't put one into the water. But passed around the videos. So you have, and look, I've met this lad's mother. I know her very well. She's a lovely woman. And the other day she told me that she was flicking through her phone, and there she was, able to see on TikTok or YouTube or one of these videos of her child's last moments. And there's already laws in this country where if you have a video of a sexual content and somebody releases it out into the public, that they're penalised for that. I can't remember the name of the law. I want to say Sophie's Law, but it's not. But there's a Coco's Law, I think it's called.
Yeah.
And so, I want us in this country to introduce a law like that stops and prohibits the sharing of people's last moments in distress. Not just distressing for the family. I think it's distressing for anyone to see. So there's that, and so there's several pieces of legislation I'm working on at the moment. But back to your question, which was about will we be bringing forward legislation? That is our hope. Look, our hope is to bring as much legislation and private members' legislation through the Dáil over the course of the next 4 years. as I said to you, it's long, it's more complex than I thought. I thought I'd be introducing a piece of legislation every week, and again, coming from the private industry where you say, yeah, let's get this done and let's roll this out. It doesn't happen as quickly as you'd like it to happen. But I am working with the Bills office at the moment. So yes, there's lots of ideas going on in the back of the head and trying to,
Well, you've been very active because we were talking to your colleague, Deputy Richard O'Donovan, and we were saying, I was saying to him, I was watching you all over the summer recess. You were up here, you Independent Ireland. You were every day. You were putting something out at the plinth, giving. You never took a day off.
Well, no, I did. No, in fairness, I did take a couple of days off. I said it was with my nieces and nephews. The
couple of days.
Yeah, but we had great fun. You know. But look, even when you're off, you're working.
Yeah.
You still have the phone in your hand. There's still somebody that needs a bit of help from you or needs a bit of advice from you. A lot of the time, as a local TD, a lot of the time it's a telephone call to whoever, and it's a conversation.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes it's about a footpath, sometimes it's about a light, sometimes it's about a tree. Other times it's to check in with someone.
Yeah.
Other times it's somebody that would like you to call to them on the weekend or whatever, and just go through a form for them.
Yeah.
They'd have the form perfectly filled out themselves, but you
they just want that reassurance.
Yeah, they just want to say, "Will you check it before I send it off?" Little things like that, and that's part of your job as well,
That's the human thing.
Well, it is, and that's what grounds you and connects you.
Yeah.
One of the best things that I do, and I would advise anyone to go into politics is, walk through your local supermarket, have a cup of coffee outside Dunn's or Tesco's, or I was going to say Roche stores. That'll tell you all day. But meet people, talk to people, and you get into this house here, and I might as well throw the watch in the bin because last night I think I left the house about 11 o'clock in the evening after starting at 7 o'clock in the morning here. But you just lose track of time.
Yeah.
And you're going from committee to committee, and you're going into the chamber, and you're doing your speech, and you're back to the office, and you're trying to do this, and you're trying to do that. You're watching what's coming up next to say, oh, I need to do a bit of research on that before I speak in it, and to have my facts and my figures correct. And you lose the track of time, and you also lose the connection with the general public. And one of the best things I do is, we come down on a Thursday night, we end up in Lidl, because we have to shop for the weekend, like everybody has to do. Fran says to me, I'm not going to Little Witch anymore because you came in, you went in for milk, and 2 hours later you come out with a lawnmower and a list of complaints or a list of problems or whatever, but it does keep it grounded. You talk to people, and people give you ideas, and people say, did you see that on RT the other night, or did you see that on TV3 the other night? And a lot of the time you don't, because you're in here.
Yeah.
And I see how people and politicians get detached. And sometimes we have this idea, just because we have all the knowledge of committee, and we have this, that, and the other, that everybody understands everything that what we understand, and it's not explained or dumbed down to them. Sometimes it's dumbed down for us, and you get briefings, and you gain extra knowledge in that. The general public don't have that. They don't see that. And yes, some of the best ideas I've had were either outside the church in Ballyvalan, or going into Tesco's in Mallow, or out in Ballincollig at a food festival, or there was a great street festival in Ballincollig the other night, or a couple of Sundays ago. We were out there, and the amount of people that came up and said, you know what you should do, and you know what you bring up, and would you look into this for me, And sometimes you're here and say, geez, I had a briefing about that about 3 months ago, and I never did a press statement on it, because it goes out of your head, because you're in that bubble, and so it's about sharing knowledge and picking up the ideas.
Yeah.
Because if you don't talk to people and listen to what they're saying and what they're going through, how are you meant to represent people? And I think a lot of TDs and senators, once they get in the gates here, kind of forget what's going on in real life.
Yeah.
And that's not being dismissive of people. Life is busy inside here 3 days a week. You're continuously playing catch up, always. But unless you're sitting down and talking to people and saying, okay, so tell me what's going on. Who's very, very good for that? And I read this a number of years ago, and it just amazed me, actually, was Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah.
Apparently she used to stop the think there was a Daimler the Prime Minister was driven around in at the time, but she used to stop the Daimler at bus stops and take like elderly ladies or young people off the street and say, "Hi, imagine the Prime Minister doing that, or the Hall Martin doing it here. But like, can I talk to you for 10 minutes and I'll drop you to wherever you're going?" Imagine doing that.
Yeah.
But what a great idea.
Yeah.
And apparently she used to say, "I want your opinion on A, B, C, and D." And these were ordinary people that were standing at the bus. And apparently she'd write everything down and put it into the handbag. And that's something that stayed with me for a very long time, about talk to people, because people have good ideas.
Yeah.
And people have, this is what you should be doing. This is the simplest way to do it. What's the point of, why wouldn't I ask, if I was going to plumb the sink in my own kitchen, why wouldn't I ask a plumber how I do it?
Yeah.
Ask a builder how you build houses, ask a developer how to get over this. And people will tell you what they're going through.
Yeah.
And it gives you a better understanding of what's
And
going on.
it's kind of something about Irish politics that's very, very unique. We are very, very close to our representatives.
Yeah, not as much as we used to be. Not as much as we used to be. I think there's a disconnect, in particular with younger politicians. Like, look, I came from a political house where my mother was the political secretary, as well as being the housewife and the rest of it. Not being paid to be the political secretary either, but they used to ring the house on Saturday, Sunday morning and the whole lot. And, the connection that I see an awful lot of politicians, it was some politician recently and said how, they don't have a constituency office, but you can reach me on Facebook or you can reach me on email. People like to have the personal connection. They like to have the conversation. They like to, and I think the one thing you can the best thing, I think the greatest gift you can give people is your time.
Yeah, that's a gift.
Yeah, well, it is, and sometimes it's harder. It's harder to give your time to certain people. At times, you say, "Jesus Almighty, what have I done?" But people, you pick up some very, very valuable points and stories and life and history lessons and life history lessons and local knowledge lessons. I always remember being at a meeting in Blackpool in Cork, and there was Arab Consulting were the consultant firm that were down. It was about Blackpool flooding. One gentleman who was maybe 80 something years of age, he said, "You do realise there was a river coming down from here?" He said, "That was culverted in the 60s. And the engineer, looking through all these like big, huge plans, and he said, "No, there's no river there. It's not on the." He said, "I used to wash myself in that river when I was a child. The river is there, and it's local knowledge and talking to people and getting the ideas." And, and the man was right. The man was 100% right. But, sometimes we can say, "Oh, well, the experts have told us this," or the NGO group have had this focus meeting and that focus meeting. And a lot of the reports that you get as a politician are "Here's the answer, give me the question" sort of reports. And there's an agenda there. Talk to the general public and you won't go wrong.
Talk to local people.
Yeah. You won't go wrong if you talk to people, and listen to people. Listen to people, more importantly, listen to people. That's my 2 cents.
Paul, have you any more questions?
No, I think, Roisin,
we covered an awful lot.
We covered a lot, and thanks.
No, not at all. Thank you for your time.
For taking the time to chat to us.
No, I'm delighted to do it.
It's fascinating, and it's really interesting to see Independent Ireland as a new party and how it is developed. I see you have a budget proposal there.
Submission, yeah. I'm not going to give you that yet,
no.
Because that's when I'm going through that. There's a couple of red lines and there's a couple of marks in that I need to change around, and we've been working very hard on that, the budgetary submission. And look, the one thing that we are promoting, and we're not doing what Sinn Féin did, which is the giveaway one for everyone in the audience sort of approach. It's very easy to get up and be in opposition and say, "Oh, you should be spending money on this, you should be spending money on that, and why aren't you spending money on the other?" There has to be fiscal responsibility as well. I think we're facing a very uncertain time in the world with tariffs. We're facing a very uncertain time in the world with what's happening in Palestine and Gaza, whereas with Russia and the Ukraine. I think there could be some serious turbulence for us, in particular with the tariffs, in particular with Mr. Trump and the unpredictability of that. So there needs to be prudence and fiscal responsibility. The first thing that you do with fiscal responsibility, and what we focused on very much so, is you trim the fat. And God knows, from what the announcements that we've seen and the waste that's in the public sector and reports that only came out yesterday, there's a lot of fat to trim before you start cutting into the Irish public and their way of life. You know, what is very concerning for all of us, and should be very concerning, is the cost of living in this country.
Yeah.
You know, electricity is, I think, 37% higher than most of Europe. Second highest in electricity costs in the Republic, compared to the rest of Europe. Insurance to do business is way up. If you're a young person and you want to start a cafe or a restaurant or a hairdressing salon, you might as well be knocking your head off the wall, because it's just impossible. It's impossible to do business, and it's getting harder. Your insurance costs are up. We have to be cognizant of the fact as well that staff costs are up.
Mm-hmm.
Employing people is up. And there's only so much you can pass on to the general public. There's only so much money you can charge for the bowl of soup until they turn on their heels and say, I can't afford to go for a bowl of soup anymore.
Yeah.
The coffee's gone up to €4.55.
Yeah.
We're going out for a cup of coffee.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, and you kind of, and we have a tendency to tap now when we go to the pub rather than take the cash out and things like that, and you look at the bill at the end of the night and you say, Jesus Almighty, it was $7.50 for a pint and a glass of wine in Dublin. I bought a glass of wine. I thought I was after buying a bottle. It was €11.50 for the house white wine, for a glass around the corner here. And, I was going to say to myself, Jesus, that was, I said, I won't be back here again. But it's a standard price now, and it's more and more difficult to go out and enjoy yourself. And it's tough for the business as well, because there's so many added on costs for the vintner, for the restaurateur. It's very hard to produce. And then there's shrinkage. Shrinkage is a huge problem we're not addressing at all in this country. Silly thing, it's a silly thing, but it drove me absolutely wild the other night. I was ranting for about half an hour about this. Both toothpaste in Lidl, and it came in a box probably, a little bit longer than that. And I didn't look at how many mils in it. I just said, okay, there's Colgate there, and, threw in 2 boxes into the trolley and off you go. Got home and we opened the toothpaste, and it was like a Mars mini pack. It was about that size inside the box, that big. And you're going, the shrinkage, and you're saying, I really felt I had been robbed, not by Lidl, but I've been robbed by the manufacturer. And then, you start doing a small bit of digging and you see there's, the slice pan has 2 slices less than it did 2 years ago. The packet of biscuits, which had 12 biscuits in it, maybe has 10 today. Toilet rolls, there's 50 sheets missing compared to what it used to be. And you're paying the same price or dearer. And a lot of the time it's dearer, as we know. While inflation might be slightly down in this country, it's gone up 5% on household items. So inflation. So what the inflation that really affects most of us every day of the week, our shopping, our day-to-day goods, has gone up again. And then you see the shrinkflation. You see everything is smaller. And then you start reading the ingredients. Again, going back to the supermarket shop, growing up in the 70s and 80s in Ireland, a box of After Eights was a real luxury thing,
Remember that?
Oh, yeah, listen, and the other day we bought After Eights, right? And took one out, and you have this nostalgia of what it tastes like, and all of a sudden this is a flexible gummy sort of. They've changed their recipe. They put cheaper ingredients in.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, you look at Cadbury's and you look at all these people that are making these products now, and they're filling them with palm oil rather than the ingredients that was there in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So you have a cheaper product being produced, masqueraded as something traditional that you enjoyed and liked, and doesn't taste the same, doesn't give you the nutrients, and costs a lot more. And then that's clear labeling as well, that we have to say there's been shrinkflation in this. It's no longer, even the bottle of Coke, it drives people mad. Do you remember when you get a mixer years ago and it was 300 ml? It's now, there's some bars now and they're doing 250 ml bottles, or they're doing the 200 ml bottles for the mixer. Everything has gotten smaller and everything has gotten dearer, and you're just not getting the bang for your buck. And that annoys people. Jesus, it annoys me. And thankfully both of us are on very good incomes. Fran works for an American company, very successful in his job, and you just think to yourself how tough it is. You look around in the supermarkets and how tough it is when you see people studying supermarket shelves and spending a bit longer to see what's the best deal. And I know we're the same as many couples in our estate and young families in our estate in Mallow. Where you see them, you'll meet them in Lidl, you'll meet them in Aldi, you'll meet them in Dunn's, because we're all shopping around for deals.
Yeah.
You know, like life shouldn't be easy. God knows it shouldn't be this hard.
It shouldn't be this hard and so expensive.
You know?
And that's why an awful lot of young professionals or even our skilled and our tradespeople are moving away and not coming back because of the cost of living and the housing.
You can't buy a house here. There's people with far better educations than, we'll say, my parents. They're the 60, 70-year-olds who came up from the 50s up, succeeded in buying a house in the 70s or 80s, 3.5 times their income. Were able, very often were people that relied on one income families. And they're seeing their children that they sacrificed for, that they didn't take the holidays to the Canaries, or they didn't take they did everything right, and they sacrificed for their kids. They made sure that their kids were educated. They wanted their kids to have a better life than them. Their kids now are well educated. They've succeeded in getting the dream job. They're earning the 60, 70,000 euros a year. And they're 28, they're 38, and they're still living in the box room in their mother and father's house.
Yeah.
That, for me, says we've failed society. That something has gone wrong somewhere, where somebody earning 70, 80,000 can't get on the property ladder in this country. It just cannot do it. It just doesn't make sense. And that has to be addressed. And it's not being addressed, it's being ignored. And there's a silent majority who are very angry. It's the parents of those children. It's those children themselves that want to get out and want to start a life. People are starting families later in life, and they're because of this, and it's very frustrating.
Yeah.
It's very frustrating that these things aren't being addressed, and yet government seems to be too busy about playing blame games and talking about who's waving the flag and who has control of the flag and who's this, and the same old bull that they came up with 20 years ago when they started attacking Sinn Féin, and they said, the Shinners have hijacked the flag, and all this sort of carry on and all this conversation. All government wants to do is create as much smoke and mirrors as they can to ensure that we're not talking about the real issues. The real issues is the cost of living, the accommodation crisis, an emergency in this country, not just social housing, those that can't get on the property ladder, those that can't, affordable housing. Affordable housing in Cork starting at 350,000. That doesn't sound affordable to me. 350,000 is a substantial home. It shouldn't be. And there's very simple steps. There's brave steps have to be taken. First of all, as a minister, you need to stand up to your civil service and say, I'm in charge of the department. You need to talk to the experts. You need to take advice. But there's very simple solutions. And, we've produced that. We've said it ourselves in the last 12 months in the Dail. If you want to make property affordable again, you have to bring down very, very quickly, and could be easily done, is you bring down the price of the value of the land.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, when my mother and father bought their house in 1974, I think they bought their house for £3,000, which is a lot of money. Is a lot of money for. My father was 21 and my mother was 18. Right? Imagine a 21-year-old and 18-year-old buying a house today. Unheard of. Unheard of. But it was common practice. It was common practice in the 70s and 80s.
And early 90s.
And early 90s. Yeah, it's true. It's true. But the value of the site of the house, if it was a three-bedroom semi-detached house in Ballylan in Cork, the site value was about 8 to 10%. So the cost of the land was 8 to 10%.
Mm.
On average now, it can be anywhere between 43 to 51% of the cost of the land itself costs that. So you look at it and say, do we have a shortage of land in Ireland? I don't think we do.
No.
I drive from my office in Blackpool to my office in Mallow nearly every day when I'm in Cork, and I see the land banks that are there. So we're sitting on land banks where, if you rezoned these and you made a level playing field for everyone and saying, okay, so you can build on this, not 2 acres, but you can build on this 100 acres, 500 acres, 2 miles, 5 miles, 10 miles of zoned land. It brings down the site value, because all of a sudden there's an abundance of land for developers and for builders to use the opportunity to develop on. No, there's challenges as well with Irish water. There's challenges with, and I accept all that. But let's start bringing down the land cost. And one way to do that very, very quickly is at the stroke of a pen, is rezoning land and bringing. There'll be winners and losers. There'll be some very, very angry, wealthy Fine Gael farmers going mad with me even suggesting that. But bring down the site, because then you bring the site cost down. That's one way to organise it. I'd abolish Irish water in the morning. I'd bring it back in. For instance, in Cork, where I'm from myself, I'd have a joint company that would be run by Cork City and Cork County Council, with local knowledge. You bring back your staff into the local authority as well, and you start building pumping stations as needed. You'd start doing your deals with the property. Look, property developers got a dirty name, and maybe rightly so, in the late 90s and the Bertie Ahern period and the whole lot. But you have to talk to them. You can't leave them outside the room, because these are the people that are developers. These are the people that know what to do, how to do. And look, I don't give a damn if a fella's making money out of something. I'd like to see if a guy is able to produce a house that is affordable to most people at 200,000, 230,000, that sort of level of price, and is making a 30% or 40% profit. Best luck to him. More power to him if he can do that. But I don't think we should leave him outside the room. And then you have to bring them into the room and say, right, is there a role for the property developer or property developers to say that we have a bank of land here? Are you interested in doing A, B, C in it? Dividing it amongst yourselves. You'll build 10, you'll build 70, depending on the capacity of how you can arrange your finances and the rest of it. And we'll work with the local authority about putting in a clean water station, putting in the pumping station. So the developer is developing and it's not, look, this isn't rocket science. This was done in the past, where the housing estate was built and the water treatment plant was built next to it, and you work with the developers to deliver a water treatment plant. So that's how you overcome Irish water. Irish water has become a state body. I'm sorry for going on for so long, but Irish water has become a state body where it's impossible to do business with them. There's a thing called the soda report, which I never heard of. So I had a developer, or not really a developer, a man that's built a couple of houses here and there, a builder. We have these fancy words now, but he's a builder, and he's done relatively well for himself in life. And he bought a site. He wants to build 50 houses in Cork. There's a pumping station right next door to the site. So there's water available to the site. He was waiting 8 months to get one letter called the soda report from Irish Water that he applied for. And he was like, yeah, we'll have that for you now in a couple of weeks. We'll have that for you in a couple of weeks. What's the delay? Oh, no, there's no delay. We'll get around to it. We'll get around to it. That was the response. That was the response I got as a TD representing him as well, when he came to me. But you had to have the soda report before you could put in the planning application to the local authority. So it made absolutely no sense. You couldn't come in with your application. But in the meantime, in the 8-month period that it took, the cost of materials went up.
Yeah.
The cost of doing business went up. He still had to pay his loan to the Bank of Ireland or AIB or whoever he has the finance with, to cover the costs. So of course, who's going to pay for that ultimately at the end is the young couple that have been lucky enough to buy that house. That should have maybe cost, in today's rate of 350 for 400,000, probably going to pay nearer to the $500,000 mark, because of the delays from somebody that is not that interested in doing their job or being efficient in their job. And I think that is the hallmark of Irish water at the moment. We could go on forever. Sorry.
Definitely, Ken O'Flynn, it's been absolutely amazing.
No, it's lovely to have you here.
We love interviewing you.
Oh, you're great. You're great. You're great. It's great to have you here, because I'm probably very, very boring.
No, we could be here until tomorrow.
Yeah. So
we really appreciate you giving us your time and listening to us and answering our questions for the viewers, because this is what the people want to know. How many other TDs or other government ministers are talking about the gender ideology? How many out there are asking, what is a woman? This is what we women and men.
I'd like them to answer. I just like them to answer. Yeah. Maybe perhaps you should put down a question to the whole Oireachtas of asking to reply to a very simple question: what is a woman? And there's so many bigger problems, real bigger problems in Irish society.
And gender ideology.
Than talking about this. I think we've adopted all this American bull and crap that comes in from our televisions and the whole lot, all this sort of thing. Yeah. There you go. But I think sometimes we're confusing and we're clouding things, and we're having debates about this and debates about that. It's a huge distraction, and I noticed one media outlet wrote this today. I think about the Dáil has spoken more about Gaza and Palestine since it came back than it has without any other issue, and it's a very important issue. What's going on out there is absolutely appalling. It's awful, but I think we have to get our own priorities straight. And I think the biggest concerns for those that want to get on the property ladder, want to be able to secure accommodation. I thought what the Taoiseach said the other day about homeless figures, 16,000 homeless figures, saying, we do realise there is roofs over their heads, they're in hotel rooms. Just there's children that have been born in a hospital and taken to a hotel room and have never seen the inside of their own doors. They're 7 and 8 years old now. And then to think that that's acceptable. I just don't get it. I just don't get it. So, when it comes to gender ideology or people talking about the flag and what this does and the rise of the right or the rise of the left, lads, let's get down to business and do the jobs and fix the problems. If you were fixing the problems from day one, when it came to housing, when it came to the basics, getting the economy right, making it affordable for people to enjoy life and work hard and enjoy your life. I'm not saying that everyone should have an easy ride. But if you got those things right, I don't think we'd see a rise of the right. I don't think you'd see people so angry and so upset about things. I don't think you'd see people so angst with government. And then for it to be used as an excuse to do nothing and to sit in your hands.
Or weapon to silence people.
Yes. And that's very, very, that's their modus operandum, is that, let's call somebody a racist and let's shut them up. And a lot of national media have been compliant on that, and that's lazy journalism as far as I'm concerned. It's very easy to take a press statement, but actually I think it's much better to dig in and do your own research and come up with your own opinion.
And have critical thinking.
Well, just think. Just think.
Well, Deputy
thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Not at all. Thank you for your time.
To Paul and
I enjoyed the conversations. I bored you terribly.
No, you didn't.
But I seem to wander into one conversation to the other.